Hi, everybody. My name is Lauren Giles, and I am from Orlando, Florida, and Key West. We're here with PRAVANA today to teach you guys mastering gray coverage, and we are so excited. Been with PRAVANA since COVID timeframe, and I am a colorist at heart, all things color, so I'm super excited to be here with each and every one of you today, going over one of the things that we do a lot behind the chair, and that is gray coverage, some of our bread and butter behind the chair. So let's head right in. So before we get started in all of the nitty gritty with our what specific shades we use for gray coverage or what's the best way to formulate that, we're going to take it back to the structure of hair. Now, sometimes behind the chair, we just get so used to that routine that we kind of forget about our structure. And the structure is very important to understand in being able to know how we go to penetrate that gray, right? So I'm gonna pull you over here. We're gonna move this over. I'm gonna move you a little bit closer so you guys can see this. I am a very visual person here. So I like to have a visual for all of you. So this is our hair follicle, okay? So on the outer part is our cuticle, okay? And what our cuticle is, I want to use the example of like shingles on the roof. It protects the house, it protects the roof. And that's what our cuticle on the outer part of the hair shaft and the follicle is our cuticle. Now we have all of these cortex cells, which are right here. You see all these little cells, and that makes up this cortex of the hair. Now, our cortex of our hair is super important because as a stylist, that's what we're trying to penetrate and alter or lighten is that cortex of the hair. Now, after the cortex, we have our medulla. Now, some people have a medulla and some people don't. People with thicker, coarser hair tend to have a medulla, and people with finer hair tend to not have a medulla. But what we also have is called melanocyte cells, and they are right within this area here, and they're pigment cells within the follicle. So as we get older, okay, and sometimes you don't have to get super old or aging in order for that to slow down and to decrease, okay? And what that does when it slows down and decreases, let me put this back up here so we're not moving all around. I just wanted you guys to be able to see our hair structure here. So if you guys need to take a picture, you can write in the chat and Sam will let me know so I can get a little bit closer so you can screenshot that, or remember it will be in your email later. But those pigment cells within the follicle as you get older, when they slow down and decrease, what happens is the melanin the pigment starts to go away, which means if you're looking at a piece of gray hair, you can tell that the pigment's starting to fade, but it's not white. It's most likely going to be gray. So the melanin's starting to decrease and slow down, but it's not completely slowed down. So if it starts to completely slow down, at that point, you're going to have no pigment, which will be white hair. Okay, so we can have gray or we can have white. So I like to think of salt and pepper as a stylist is a great way to kind of reiterate that. Now here's where it gets a little tricky. Our white hair, okay, isn't actually considered white. Yes, it looks white and it appears white, but if you take a piece of paper behind that white, you will see a little bit of residual warmth. The melanin has completely decreased and slowed down, so it's appearing as white, but there is slight pigment within it, okay? So I hope that makes sense. If anybody has any questions, please go ahead and write that down in the chat for me, okay? So now that we have our structure of hair taken care of, let's get into our developers, okay? And I'm going to take you through all of our developers and how the developer works. So what we have is 0 lift, 10 volume, 20 volume, 30 and 40 volume. With gray coverage, we're going to utilize 20 and 10 and 20 volume, but I'm going to kind of walk you through the process of how developer works. So make sure to get your pens out and go ahead and write this down. So our 0 lift has a 1.5% hydrogen peroxide. Now our 10 volume has 3%. Okay, so then our 20 volume has 6%, 30 volume has 9%, and 40 volume has 12%. Now let's head back on over to 10%. So our first 3% is strictly deposit. First 3% is strictly deposit. So 10 volume is full deposit. No lift, no shift, straight deposit. Okay? And then when we get into 20 volume, that first 3% is deposit like our 10, and that second 3% is one level of lift. Okay? So 10 volume, straight deposit. 20 volume, the first 3% is to deposit. The second 3% is to shift. Now, if we go into 30, let's take a guess. What do we think it is? First 3% is deposit and two levels of lift. Okay? Now with 40 volume, I know you guys got this, okay? The first 3% is deposit, and then we have 3 levels of lift. But remember, today with Mastering Great Coverage, we're going to utilize our 10 and our 20 volume. Okay? Feel good? All right, let's move on. So now we're going to kind of get into looking at, before we start identifying gray, we really need to go through the steps of what are we looking at behind the chair, right? Not everybody's gray is the same. So when I'm sitting down for a consultation prior to my service, we have to first look at the client and say, where am I starting out? What kind of gray am I looking at? Am I looking at somebody with sparse long grays? Am I looking at somebody with 25% gray? Am I looking at somebody with 30% gray or 50% gray or 75% gray or 100% gray? So first, learning how to identify that. Now, pro tip, really pay attention to, sometimes I know myself behind the chair, a lot of my clients with gray have a lot of 100% white in the front. And sometimes in the back, it's not 100%, it's 50%. So really taking an eye on, okay, what am I looking at and what am I trying to cover? Sometimes we can use 2 different kinds of gray coverage formulas, maybe one with 10, maybe one with 20. I will get into later. Hold on, we'll get right there. So what we can do is we can utilize that in writing that down maybe before we go to formulate. So that way it's a little bit easier to really identify where we're starting out and where are we going. Now, sometimes we think, oh, we're just going to go grab this and cover gray. But sometimes maybe with somebody with complete white hair or gray hair might have a different idea of what they want that gray coverage tone to look like. So really identifying with the client, where do they want it to go? What do they visually want their route to look like? And that's a great thing to kind of pull back and say, okay, I'm not just covering gray. I am deciding not only am I trying to create a full coverage look, but I'm also wanting to create the right tone for that client, especially if they're used to something before their hair turned gray. Now, where am I starting? Where am I going? And is there obstacles in my way? So essentially, like we were saying earlier, with the front being white and the back being salt and pepper, that's an obstacle. How do I handle that? And then what do I need to do to get there? The correct formulation. Maybe I need to change the developer from the front to the back, okay? And how long is it going to take me to get there? So maybe the front needs a 30-minute processing and maybe the back needs 45 minutes. But going through those steps before gray coverage is really going to set up your service in order to know what the best formulation for that client looks like, okay? Now we are going to go into what our naturals, our naturals, our blended neutrals, and our balanced neutrals. Now our naturals, pull out the pens, is 1 blue, 1 red, and 1 yellow. Those are our naturals, our N series, okay? And what that means is because we have 1 of each, red, blue, and yellow, it's going to lean slightly cooler, okay? And those are our naturals, our 1N, our 3N, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, N. Those are our naturals, so slightly are going to lean cooler. And then we have blended neutrals, okay? And that is 1 blue, 2 yellow, and 3 red. Okay, blended neutrals. And what that's going to do is, because we have 3 present, 1 blue and 2 yellow, 3 red, it's going to lean slightly warmer. Okay, so we have our naturals that are going to lean cooler and our blended neutrals that are going to lean warmer. Now with our naturals and our blended neutrals, those are in, I want you guys to write this one down, our PRAVANA ChromaSilk Cream Permanent Hair Color. Okay, those come in our ChromaSilk Permanent Cream Hair Color. Now, balanced neutrals. Follow me here, make sure we're writing this down. Blended and balanced, 2 different things. So in our PRAVANA ChromaSilk Permanent Cream Hair Color, we do not have a balanced color. We have a slightly cooler with our ends, and with our blended, we have slightly warmer. Okay, so with our balanced, we have 1 blue, 2 red, 3 yellow. Okay, I'm gonna say that again. 1 blue, 2 red, 3 yellow. Okay, and that is going to be in our PRAVANA ChromaSilk HydraGloss. Right here, our HydraGloss. And those are going to be completely balanced. So not slightly cool, not slightly warm, balanced. So we're going to go over that one more time to make sure everybody has that. We have our naturals, 1 blue, 1 red, 1 yellow, slightly cooler. And then we have our blended, which is 1 blue, 3 red, 2 yellow, 1 blue, 3 red, 2 yellow. And then we have our balanced, which is 1 blue, 2 red, 3 yellow, which is our equal balanced color, and only PRAVANA ChromaSilk HydraGloss. And our naturals and blended are completely, sorry. Our PRAVANA ChromaSilk Permanent Hair Color is our naturals, and our blended neutrals. All right. So with that being said, if anybody has any questions, please write them in the chat. I want to make sure we have all of you there because that's going to tie into our next part. I pulled these out. I want you guys to really utilize your swatch book. And I have some things here that I pulled out of the swatch book to show you how you can utilize that behind the chair. And if you don't have me in that moment and you're like, oh, I forgot what Lauren said on the Mastering Great Coverage video and you don't have time to pull out the video, utilize our swatch book. Okay, and I'll tell you how you can get a swatch book at the end of the class. So hang tight with that. So we have our colors here. Now for great coverage, you can utilize 3 different series within gray coverage, okay? We have our naturals, which I'll show you here. Okay, so remember, what do these lean? Slightly cooler, okay? And then we have our blended neutrals, which I'll show you guys here. And what do these lean? Slightly warmer. Pro tip, one of my favorites is 6NT and 7NT. I really, really love those formulas. So these are the blended neutrals, again, slightly warmer. And then we also have our 0.3 gold series. All right, so write that down as well. So gray coverage, you're gonna grab natural, you're gonna grab blended neutrals, and you're also gonna grab the gold series. So those 3 we're gonna utilize in our formulation to how we cover gray coverage. And I'll give you guys some examples that I use behind the chair because I know I'm a visual, so hairdressers, a lot of us can be visual. So with that being said, remember, we talked about what obstacles are in our way, identifying the gray. That's something that we're going to take into this next segment. Now, when identifying gray, 25% gray, we're going to use 25% of one of these. Okay? So 25% of maybe in natural, because that's slightly more blue. Okay. Or we're going to use maybe a gold because the client wants to be a little bit brighter. Or we're going to use a blended neutral. Now, if they have 25% gray, you use 25% of your gray target shade. And then the rest of it is going to be, everything is going to be whatever your other target shade is. 25% one of these if I have 25% gray, and the rest is going to be my target formula. Now, here's the trend I bet you guys can catch on. So, if you have 50% gray, you're going to use 50% of our target shade or 50% of our gray coverage shade, sorry, and 50% of our target shade. Okay? So, if you wanted to do more of a natural, such as a 6N, they have 50% gray, I could use 6N and then use maybe 622 or something else within that formula. If we have 75% gray, we're going to use 75% of one of these shades and 25% of our target shade. Now, if it is 100% gray, we are going to utilize 100% of one of our gray coverage colors. Okay, now that's the great thing of having the 3 different picks between naturals, blended neutrals, and golds. You can still customize that color within these 3 realms of what you want that tone to look like. You don't just have to grab a 4N, a 9N. You can mix that with some of the other shades. You could, you could do a 7NT with maybe a little bit more of a 7N. So you have a slightly warmer, but you have more of that cool to kind of pull it back together so you're not too slightly warm or you're not too cool. Now, with gray coverage, you are going to use 20 volume. Okay. Now, pro tip, it is 1 to 1.5. So let's go through that real quick so I don't go off on sidetracked. So when you're using PRAVANA ChromaSilk Creme Permanent Hair Color, you're going to use 1 part color to 1.5 parts developer. Okay. I'm going to say that again. 1 part color to 1.5 parts developer. With great coverage, we're going to use 20 volume. Now, my pro tip, and you're going to let it process for 30 to 45 minutes. I'm going to give you some examples and pro tips on how I can utilize that 10 over that 20. I know personally, some people use 20, some people use 10. When I am utilizing the front half of the head, that is 100% white. I might want to grab, pro tip, I would tend to grab 10 volume to maximum deposit in my front. Now in my back, if I'm 50-50, I might need on that gray hair versus that white hair or some kind of pigmented of that natural melanin that's still there with some white or gray in between it, I might need that 1 level of lift from that 20 volume. Because remember, first 3% is deposit, the second 3% is lift. So if my front is 100% white, I might want just straight deposit with no lift. So I could utilize that same formula with 10 volume in the front. And in the back, I might go grab 20 volume to lift. I would go grab that 20 volume to lift that 1 level of lift in order to not look too dark back here because we still might need that level of lift on that darker hair that's present. Okay, so I'm going to give you a pro tip and an example of how we can utilize maybe 2 different shades of gray coverage with maybe not even doing a highlight. I have a client. In the front of her head, again, 100% white. In the back, she is completely, without a doubt, more pepper than white. Okay, she's definitely more gray than white in the back. So the front, she doesn't necessarily want to do a highlight. So because that hair is 100% white in the front, I do a 9N with 10 volume. And in the back of her head, I do 7N with 20 volume, just to shift 1 level of lift from that darker hair that is present. It doesn't make it any warmer. It fully makes it look true to tone rather than shifting into using something when people tend to grab something a little higher because they think they need more lift. You don't. You just need that 1 level of lift from the 20 volume. So in the back, you can utilize the 1 part color to 1.5 parts developer, 50% of one of our gray coverage shades with the other 50% of the target shades. So I cut her a lot of time in her formula with 622 because she is slightly warmer when we do use that little bit of lift. And in the front, I do use full 9N with 10 volume, 1 part color to 1.5 parts developer. Okay, do we have any questions? Are we feeling good? Haven't seen any questions pop up, so I think we are good. So with that being said, when we utilize gray coverage, what happens when we have somebody who is maybe more resistant? Why, Lauren, would I do 30 minutes versus 45 minutes? And this is something I actually love to teach because it's something that some people will do 30 and some people will do 45 and they have no idea why they're doing one or the other. So here is why. Okay, so with 30 minutes, right, it takes some time for our hair to swell, right? So with gray hair, what is gray hair known to be? Resistant. So if we think about for a minute, if our hair is more resistant with gray, is it going to take the same amount of time as hair that's not gray to swell? All right. So with that being said, with having hair that is more resistant, giving it that extra 15 minutes is it's going to give that extra 15 for that hair to swell. So that way it has plenty of time to process through. Is that an aha for anybody? Because I love teaching that. I think it's one of the really cool things that we kind of get away from when we're talking about hair structure and the why. That is why the hair is resistant. It needs just a little bit longer to swell. Okay, so going into gray coverage and what formulas we like to see, what would we prefer? I would love for you guys to put in the comment section what you guys use. Do you guys use 20 volume more when doing gray coverage? Or do you use 10 volume more? All right. So one other thing that I want to show you guys that is in your swatch book is these amazing sheets. I think a lot of times we get away from use 10 volume more. Well, I urge you to a client who is half 50%, maybe in the back versus different from the front. I would love to challenge you to doing something maybe with 2 different developers and create them a custom look with gray coverage without having to do a highlight or a high lift. Okay, 20 volume. Okay, so we have a little bit of both, right? We have some people who use 20 and we have some people that use 10. You guys can always message me on Instagram. It'll say it right here. It's creations by Lauren _. And if you would like to see a before and after of a specific client that I do that with, I would love to send that your way. 20 volume, Terry says. So you have a little bit of both in here. Now, if you guys have your swatch book, okay, I just started using PRAVANA. Well, welcome to PRAVANA. We're very happy to have you. With this, it actually goes through what we talked about with the developers. Okay, so with 10 volume, maximum deposit, it'll even say here 30 minutes. Now, that's a great actual thought. Let's think about this. If gray hair is going to take longer to swell with 10 volume and its maximum deposit, would I let it sit 30 or 45 minutes? Or would I go by the same theory that 45 minutes would take a little bit longer to swell? Here at PRAVANA, we do teach 30 minutes. But as a pro tip to you guys, I have learned that it does help sometimes with some of those people that are more resistant. Maybe not everybody is gray is as resistant as some others. A lot of the times behind the chair, we know that as stylists. We can be like, I have Cheryl or whoever that specific client is that I just know that I really struggle with her gray. Okay, so maybe that's on Cheryl. We do 45 minutes, even if you're deciding to utilize 10 volume over than the recommended 20 volume. Okay, and then we have our 20 volume up to 1 level of lift, and it'll say 30 to 45 minutes, and then 30 and 40 if you use that in the future for other shades. But remember, with gray coverage, we're utilizing 10 and 20 volume. Okay, now has anybody in the chat used the newer PRAVANA ChromaSilk HydraGloss. Has anybody used that yet? I am obsessed with it. So I'm going to give you a little pro tip because remember we talked about balanced neutrals versus blended neutrals. So I'm going to ask the chat because everybody seems to be kind of chatting in here. What is a blended neutral? Do we lean more balanced or do we lean more warm? Warm. Look at, love it. So yes, it leans more warm. Okay. So with that being said, our HydraGloss is what? Does it lean slightly warmer or does it lean more balanced? I'm gonna answer because balanced. Thank you, Crystal. Yes. Okay. So we're learning. I love it. I love it. I love it. So our HydraGloss is our balanced neutral. And remember, we do not have that in PRAVANA ChromaSilk Permanent Cream Hair Color. Okay. So if I have put on my gray coverage, right? And I'm waiting and the ends are a little bit faded out, but I want to give her a little refresh, but I don't necessarily know because Cheryl tends to change her hair all the time that I don't want to put something permanent on those ends to lifen them up, right? So that's when I would love to grab my PRAVANA ChromaSilk HydraGloss, okay? And this is a Demi-Permanent line, zero ammonia. Okay, let's please write that down. No ammonia in our HydraGloss. And I'm going to teach you another fun way to use this behind the chair for great blending because we have great coverage where we want to be 100% covered, but then we also have some clients where we need gray blending. Okay, and I'm going to walk you guys through what different case scenarios that we can use that in. But for now, we're going to start with, let's say we have our full coverage permanent cream hair color on our roots that's sitting. What I love to do is get that on first and then go back in and mix my HydraGloss because HydraGloss is 1-to-1. Let's write that down. Permanent cream hair color is 1-to-1.5. And HydraGloss is 1-to-1. Now we know our permanent cream hair color is 30 to 45 minute processing time. HydraGloss is a progressive color. It's a 20-minute processing time. Okay. Now this is not mixed with 10 or 20 because there's no ammonia present. Okay. We want to use zero lift, which is at 1.5 peroxide. Okay. So what do we use with HydraGloss? What kind of developer? Zero lift. Okay. So once our roots are sitting, we have enough time to go over and mix our HydraGloss. Sometimes I like to already have, when we're identifying the gray and we're identifying what we're going to do at that same time, I formulate both shades. So I'm a little bit more ahead. So that way I have enough time to get back to that client when they have 20-minute processing time left to put this on. Okay. Now remember, our permanent hair color will stop processing after the processing time. It's not going to go progressively darker like HydraGloss would. Okay. So this can be used after you put your root touch up to melt onto the rest of the hair and cut down that extra time at the bowl. Amazing. Okay, I really love doing that with a 4NT, a 6NT. Those are some of the shades I use a lot of the time while I'm doing great coverage to melt through to really liven up the ends. HydraGloss is also 3 times the shine. My clients notice it without me even having to explain it or say anything about it. They will literally tell me, Lauren, my hair has never been so shiny. I said, it's the HydraGloss. So another pro tip about HydraGloss, let's say you don't want to pull anything through and you're really liking how that color is fading at the bottom and it's a client who's just a root touch up. Pro tip, you can utilize clear as a shine treatment to melt that into the hair as well. Okay, and you would still use that with zero lift. So 1 part HydraGloss to 1 part zero lift developer. Okay, so let's talk about how we can utilize HydraGloss behind the chair for great blending. Now, because there is no ammonia present, okay, let's say that again. Because there is no ammonia present, that means we are not going to be able to swell the hair in order to change that cortex of the hair. Okay, we got it? So That being said, let's say you have a male client. We can apply a HydraGloss with zero lift and it's going to great blend. It's not going to fully cover, but it's going to blend in that root. Another great way that I like to utilize HydraGloss. Again, what does it not have in it? Ammonia. No ammonia. So we're great blending, not great covering. Okay. So another great way that I like to utilize that as a pro tip behind the chair is, let's say I'm doing a highlight. Let's say in between, it's a client who just doesn't want a line of demarcation, okay, as it grows out. I would tend to grab my PRAVANA HydraGloss Demi-Permanent line, PRAVANA ChromaSilk HydraGloss Demi-Permanent line to gray blend that root, okay? Even if I'm doing some form of balayage and I have some root out, but they really just don't want to commit to that full gray coverage, that's when I'm going to go grab my PRAVANA HydraGloss. And remember, no ammonia present, it's not going to cover. So something that I like to utilize within my consultation when I'm identifying what I'm working with, talking to the client about their desired tone, I talk to them, do you want to not see your gray at all and have some maintenance with covering that gray? Or do we want something that's going to kind of blend them in, but you might have to come back a little bit more often and you're still going to see them, but they're going to be more translucent, but they will look for the most part covered. Okay. And when they say that, that gives you, as the stylist, standing back from it saying, okay, what am I going to utilize in my portfolio? Am I going to use PRAVANA ChromaSilk permanent cream hair color, or do I want to do more of a gray blend with PRAVANA ChromaSilk HydraGloss? Okay. Is everybody following? Everybody feels good. It sounds like you guys are, because we have a lot of people kind of chatting up in here, and I love that. So I want to thank you guys for coming to the class. I'm having so much fun with all of you guys. It sounds like you guys are learning something. Does anybody have any questions so far with all of that we went through so far? Is everybody following? Does anybody have any questions for what they struggle with behind the chair with gray coverage? HydraGloss, how does it fade? That's a great question. The question on the floor is, how does HydraGloss fade? I will say for me, behind the chair, it fades to the point where sometimes I'm like, oh, we could probably do HydraGloss every other treatment. The pigment is amazing in it. It is so shiny and it doesn't fade, remember, because it's a balanced neutral. So there's not a bunch of residual warmth or a bunch of residual cool. It's completely balanced neutral with our NTs. So I really, when picking the shades in HydraGloss, I'm really self-aware of which shades I'm grabbing for what I want for long-term effects, if that makes sense. Does that answer your question? On wet hair. Okay, so I actually utilize, that's a great question. Thank you for that question. So do you utilize HydraGloss on wet hair? I want to make sure I'm repeating the question so when this is recorded back, because you guys aren't going to be able to see the chat, you'll be able to know what the question on the floor was. So the question on the floor was, how do I feel about HydraGloss on wet hair? So you can actually apply it on wet and dry hair. Okay, so I do always think about when you do have wet hair, think about that it might appear a little bit lighter. I have never noticed that, but always keep that in the back of your head. Does HydraGloss tend to be a little darker than? I will say with my darker shades, to me, they're very true to tone. If you need to, if you think that they are, or you're a little afraid to use them behind the chair because you haven't utilized them, I would urge you, go to the store, grab some boxes and swatch them. With HydraGloss, they are intermixable shades. So a lot of times it's hard to, we just want to go grab that box, right? But something that I love about HydraGloss is the fact that I can mix and make whatever I want to. It gives me the possibilities of everywhere. So if you're worried about the shades being too dark or too light, or what do you want tone wise, I would really, really urge you to grab some swatches. Amazon, I've even got some really great ones on Temu, and utilize those to swatch. And I've also, what I've kind of done is I've swatched formulas that I thought in my head on the swatches, and then I've actually been able to write them down in a book, and I number the swatches and show them to clients if it's not in the swatch book. Okay, and I'll show you guys these swatches. Did I answer all of those questions? Sometimes I like think about something as I'm answering a question, but did I answer all of those questions? I know I saw one question on the floor was, how is it on light hair? I will give you guys a few formulas for the HydraGloss that I love. And then we can go from there, but this is our HydraGloss. And one thing I love about our HydraGloss swatch book here is you see our color wheel. It shows on the color wheel where it leans, whether it leans more slightly blue or kind of slightly more green base. And our HydraGloss is going to be more sheer, and our permanent cream hair color is going to be more covered. Okay, so here are some HydraGloss shades. Make sure you guys, and there are a few that we just launched that aren't in here. Sure, 9G, 7C. Okay, so here's our HydraGloss. Okay, love it. And then there's that clear. So I always tell people, when you have HydraGloss behind the chair, especially if you're gonna you do more gray blending behind the chair, have more clear. So let's say for whatever reason you ran out of 6N, but you have 4N clear, you can make it. I think sometimes behind the chair it's just easier in quick moments to grab a box, but let your creativity fly. I urge you, like, think outside the box, have fun. One thing that I really love is actually making rose gold with a dot of 5R and a dot of 7CR with majority clear. So HydraGloss can be used for gray blending, or it can also be used when you're already doing gray coverage here and we want to melt another color on. Okay, so I know I saw a question about lighter formulas. Lighter formulas, I tend to, pro tip, personally, I tend to drop the level a little bit if I'm gray blending. That way I have a little bit more pigment in a shade, and then I can always melt that on the mids to ends with another HydraGloss formula if I want it more neutral or a little bit cooler. One of my favorite HydraGloss shades to melt into a platinum if I'm doing somebody with a root with a 7N, but I have some old highlight here that I want to refresh. Excuse me. A lot of times with my platinum girls, with my PRAVANA ChromaSilk permanent cream hair color for the root, I love to grab a 7N with 10 volume, or if they have more of pepper in that, it's a 50-50. I will tend to go grab more of a 20 volume instead of a 10 volume. And then I will melt in 10B or 10 ABV equal parts with 8B. One of my favorite blonde platinum toners with our PRAVANA HydraGloss. Now, I'm going to give you a example for the, let's say the base itself. You don't want to drop it to a 7 or an 8. I would grab a 9 GBV because it has a little bit more warmth for coverage, gray blending, not coverage, gray blending on the base. And I will pull through maybe something of 10 ABV, which is this one here. And that is actually a very beautiful, beautiful shade as well. So if you have not already, please, please, please grab some PRAVANA HydraGloss. Try the gray blending out. See how you feel about it. You know, I use this also for tap and smudge roots behind the chair. So if they do have gray present, you would be gray blending at that point. And a lot of you probably do that without even knowing it. So remember that you can grab your PRAVANA HydraGloss for gray blending. Right, so we have gray coverage. gray blending. I'm going to move this back. So here's our swatch book. There's something else that I wanted to show you on these pages. So I know we talked about our developers here, okay? And then it'll actually tell you up here as well when to use it, mixing ratios, and processing time, which you will see here in processing time. It will say, like we talked about, 30 to 45 minutes. Now, on this side here, you'll see all of our shades up here, which we have our naturals, our 0.3s, and our blended neutrals that are gray coverage. Now, also here we have formulate with gray coverage. Remember, utilize your swatch book. Okay, it is here to help you. It is here when you get stuck or you just are like, you know what, let me step back for a minute. I see it in my head, but at the same time, I'm struggling with this client. Utilize this. Okay, it's formulating with gray. If I'm not there with you, right there with you, and you're like, what did she say again? Utilize these pages. We have our developers here that we talked about and our gray coverage there as well. All right, I want to give you another pro tip about gray coverage. I know we all have had that specific client that is super, super stubborn, right? It is just so difficult to cover this client. They always come out translucent, but Lauren, I swear I'm doing everything right. I'm using 50% of my formula, 100% of my formula. I'm letting it sit for 45 minutes with 20 volume or 10 volume. I've tried 20, I've tried 10, Lauren. What do I do? What do I do? Okay, I'm going to tell you what to do. So if you have a client that is you can't figure out why it's not covering, we're going to pre-soften the hair. Okay, so what I want you guys to do is I want you to go grab your color, grab one of your gray covered shades. You're going to open it up. And we always like to use a key at PRAVANA. And you're going to take straight pigment, put it in a bowl with no developer, and you're going to apply it. Okay, and while you're going back to mix your formula, it is going to be pre-softening that gray. You will then go back and put your formula with the developer on the gray hair, but I want you to pre-soften everything that's visual. And maybe that's one of those cases where you do everything where it's visual, and then you realize everything underneath is actually still struggling. Okay, so maybe you have to pre-soften all of it. I tend to like to do more of the visual, the top area, go and mix, and then come back and pre-soften. Remember, when applying gray coverage, okay, we don't want super thick sections. Okay, we want to really make sure that we're going through with clean sectioning for quads and going through the hair and being able to see through each section. So that way we're making sure that we have enough product on the base. So that way we're making sure that that saturation is very good. So that way that color can penetrate that cortex of the hair. Okay. So here at PRAVANA, we have just relaunched our care line, and our care line is all color safe. And I love that. We have our volume, our moisture marvel, and our repair radiance, and our best blonde. And those are all color safe. So now you can utilize not only behind the chair having our gray coverage and our gray blending and how we're going to do our gray coverage melting into our HydraGloss. What's going to keep this color the best and the longest is our PRAVANA Care and Styling line. I'm really happy with just how all of it's working on all the different hair textures and how I don't have to worry about whatever the client needs. I know that it's color safe and it's going to make their color last the longest. Okay, so remember, key points from today. What are those key points? Let's go over that so we can wrap it up so you guys make sure we have all the informations. We have our naturals, which are slightly bluer. We have our blended neutrals, which are slightly warmer. And we have our balanced neutrals that are completely equal and balanced. And remember, naturals and blended neutrals are in our PRAVANA ChromaSilk permanent cream hair color, and our balanced neutrals are in our PRAVANA ChromaSilk HydraGloss Demi line. Okay, remember our 3 shades. We spell For gray coverage, for full gray coverage, our blended neutrals, gold and natural for full coverage. We're going to grab 20 volume for gray coverage, 1 part color to 1.5 parts of developer for 30 minutes. And if we have somebody more gray, for up to 45 minutes as well. If we are going to be using HydraGloss, that is for gray blending. Remember, we're not going to have full coverage due to not having ammonia present for swelling. Okay? Remember, we can use HydraGloss for gray blending, and pro tip, to melt it in after our gray coverage is applied, full coverage at the base, or if we're doing a gray blend at the base as well. Okay? Remember our developers, 10 volume is straight deposit, 20 volume is straight deposit and 1 level of lift. 30 volume is straight deposit with 2 levels of lift, and 40 volume is straight deposit with 3 levels of lift. Okay, so, and remember, go back to your hair structure. Your hair structure is so important in understanding. And I will tell you, so many people are like, oh, my gray has gone gray early, or why is it going gray, or I don't want it to turn gray. And you know what? I bet you if behind the chair you explain that to your client, they're going to think, oh my gosh, this girl, I just took this mastering gray coverage class. I want to do this with you, or I want to try this with you. Now, one last thing that I'm going to give you as a pro tip before we wrap up, because I know our class is slowly coming to an end here. I've enjoyed all of my time with all of you today. But one thing that I have seen behind the chair as a stylist and as a PRAVANA educator, I go back to everything that I taught you today. And in formulating gray, right, we can grab an end that's slightly bluer, or we can grab a blended neutral slightly warmer, depending on what the client's tone wants to be. But let's say somebody's 100% white, 100% white, and you grab a natural. And you're just like, I don't know what's going on, Lauren. I'm using 20 volume. I've tried using 10. I've done it for 45 minutes. It's not working. One thing that I've learned behind the chair is, remember, we have our 3 shades that we can utilize. And sometimes we're afraid to grab the gold because we want them to be cooler. Okay. But if gray hair has little to no pigment in it, it needs that warmth. We need to put that warmth back in that formula. So I'm going to urge you to try, maybe, remember, if it's 100% gray and it's 100% white, right? We need to utilize 100% of one of these shades. Now, it doesn't just have to be one of these shades, because gold and natural, guess what, are all gray coverage. So you could use 50% of your gold and 50% of your natural. That doesn't work, maybe you go and you do 100% gold and say, hey, it's going to be slightly warmer today, but after that, I will tone it down a little bit with some of our HydraGloss. And maybe that's when you go in and use the balanced neutral at the bowl after you do your root touch up, after the gray is fully covered. But a client is going to be happier making sure, if they want a full coverage look, that you have utilized and been able to fully cover their gray, maybe with that 0.3. If you want to start with the blended neutral, since it's slightly warmer, start there. That is one pro tip that I really wanted to give you. Does anybody else have any questions before we wrap it up today that I can get answered? Because I know our class is wrapping up here. Sam, do we have any questions? Did we answer all of them?
No questions in the chat.
Wonderful. Thank you. All right, everybody. So if you guys need to DM me for whatever reason, I am Creations by Lauren _ on Instagram. I am here for anything that you need. If you guys would like to see any pictures of clients of mine that I've done different things with, I would love to share. I'm getting to that. I knew it was coming. I'm like, I'm waiting for it. You always can message me there. I'm always willing to help you guys in any way that I can. Bear with me, as I do have a little one at home, but I will always get back with you as best as I can. Swatch book. The $1 million question, where can I get one of these? How many of you, with a raise of hands, are signed up for PRAVANA perks? Who doesn't know about? You're so welcome, Crystal. Don't leave yet, because we got to tell you how to get the swatch book. Who knows anything about PRAVANA perks? I'm going to tell you about them. So what you want to do As stylist behind the chair, I love Pravana Perks. It's something we rolled out, and it's where you can get points for your purchases, whether you're going to RDA, whether you're going to Salon Centric, whether you're going to Cosmoprof. Sam just linked it below. What you're going to do is you're going to log on to there, and yay, I'm so happy. Have you gotten to utilize it, Terry? You're going to sign up through there, and your email, your name, your last name, and it's also going to ask you what your account numbers are for those stores that you shop at the most. Now, what that's going to do is you don't have to do anything with it. And this, let me slow down because I just get so excited about it. This is not associated with any of the other store rewards points that you guys are getting. This is strictly through Pravana. So sometimes you'll log in and they're like, Lauren, where are my points? It will automatically, at the end of each quarter, you're not going to see them after every purchase with Pravana Perks, as long as when you sign up, you put, like, mine has my Cosmoprof and mine has my Salon Centric in there, and it just automatically at the end of the quarter uploads my points. Now, the cool thing about Pravana Perks, we have a Pravana exclusive. That's where we get the swatch book. Okay. And there's other cool Pravana swags in there as well. I know for myself, I've gotten stuff for my suite here. But there's so many different things, baby things, electronics. But yes, that will upload your points every quarter at pravanaperks.com. Again, you guys can message me. If you guys have any issues with Pravana Perks, you guys can message me. You can always call 1-800-PRAVANA if you have any questions with gray coverage or any issues in general. We're always here to help you. Also, with Pravana Perks, there is also downloadable education as well. And remember to go to our website. Seen any points from Armstrong McCall? Okay, Sam, is there any way we could help him with that by any chance? I'll have Sam respond to that, Terry. If not, go ahead and message me and I can see if I can get that answer for you. But you have 1-800-PRAVANA. Somebody's always there to answer your questions. You can always message me, and then also go on to our website. Our website has a lot of new trending looks, our calicos, our Neapolitan with some formulas there. I know our new Pride article just got launched, and there's also education videos as well. Now, also, we have a color certification. Okay, please, please, please go to our website and do the color certification. You'll probably hear some things about gray coverage that we already went over today, but it will take you through our portfolio and get you a certification, which is also super, super helpful. If you guys have any other questions, please reach out to me. I'm Lauren. It's great to meet you guys today, and I hope that you can utilize, or I've challenged you to do something new behind the chair that you haven't done, or maybe answered a question that you were like, oh, I just can't figure it out. Thank you guys so much for having me here at Pravana. We love education and we love being able to be here and help you guys in any way in utilizing our color line behind the chair. I know for me, Pravana, I eat, live, and breathe it, and my clients love it just as much as I do. Please, please, please go ahead and check out our new styling line or our new shampoo line, our care line. It is amazing. I love all of the new smells that go with them. And remember, they are color safe. So that's something that you can also talk to your clients behind the chair in upselling after a service with our retail. Hey, these are all color protectant. We can talk about what your hair needs, as well as going through with explaining, our hair structure. And maybe if they have more damage and that cuticle layer is a little bit more frayed, we're going to go grab Repair Radiance for them. But remember, it's color safe. So kind of talking about that, not only as a stylist behind the chair, or as a stylist, as a colorist, but also as a stylist selling to my client. Thank you guys so much. I hope I answered all of your questions. Sam, is there anything else? Any other questions in the chat that we have not answered yet?
No, we're doing great. All right. Thank you so much to everyone who joined us. Remember, this will be sent to you so you can rewatch this class anytime you would like. And please make sure to check out pravana.com and sign up for future classes as well. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye, guys.